Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to Getting to Know You. I'm your host, Robert Jaquay. On today's show, we are going to focus on senior resources and services in the town of Colonie. My guests are Jan Medved, who is the director of the Town of Colonie Senior Resource Department, Ed Neery, who is the executive director of Colonie Senior Service Centers Incorporated, and Russ Ward, who is secretary to the board of the Colonie Senior Network. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's go meet our guests. Jan, Ed, Russ, thank you very much for being my guest today.
It's good. Thank you for having us.
Now we have a lot of ground to cover today, and I want to make sure we can cover it all. But before we get into the meat of the matter, I generally like to ask my guests to give a little bit of their background, where they came from and how they got here. So I'll start with you, Jan.
Okay. Well, I came from New Jersey, went to college in upstate New York, and started actually in the aging field at 19. And I've continued up till today.
Okay, very good. Ed?
I'm with the Colonie Senior Service Centers, and I started with that organization as a board member initially in 1999 and became the executive director in 2001. Prior to that, I spent 30 years in the banking industry. Live here in Colonie.
Great. And Russ?
I'm a professor of sociology at the University at Albany. I'm originally a native of Rochester and did my graduate work at Wisconsin. And I've been at the university 33 years. Wow. And my main areas of interest are in sociology of aging, both teaching and research. And I've been involved with the Colonie Senior Service Centers and now the Colonie Senior Network for a number of years.
Okay. Now we're going to differentiate in terms of what you all represent, but you really all work together. Yes. In the town of Colonie, we have the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department, and that's the department that you're the director of. So can you give our guests some idea as to what actually you do there?
Sure. Well, basically our department was started in 1979, and people were really looking for information and trying to find services. So we started out very small, and actually up till today, information is our biggest product. We get a lot of people who correspond with us through email. We have a lot of caregivers all over the country that are in touch with us. We also provide, we're sort of the social service component for the town. We have one case manager and 2 case workers and a part-time specialist. We see many people, they come in basically looking for entitlement programs. If they can't come into our office, we do go to their homes. And we also, as we give out information, we follow up with them if they've, gotten hold of the agencies that we've suggested to them. That works out quite well that way.
Now, is a town nurse in your department actually, or no? Is she just...
Her office is next to ours.
Okay.
We work very closely with her.
All right.
She has a very strong caseload of people out in the community, mostly older people, and she does have office hours for people that want to come in for blood pressure checks or medication checks or things like that. But all her services are under a doctor's orders.
Okay. All right. Now, Ed, you're the executive director of Colonie Senior Service Centers Incorporated. So what is that?
That's a mouthful, isn't it? Our organization is a nonprofit corporation that was formed by the town, if you will, or the idea, the suggestion came from the town to form a nonprofit corporation to handle the growth of seniors in the coming years. And actually it turned out to be a terrific model that I think other communities would certainly like to follow, because it allows for us to continue to grow and help to support the needs of seniors in addition to the work that the Senior Resource Department does. So we were formed in 1981. Last year we celebrated our 25th anniversary. Wow. We started out as a operation dealing with meals and health and recreation programs. Transportation was, of course, a great need at that time as it is today. And today we are providing services in transportation, housing, health and recreation programs, meals, and adult day service programs. We work with the Town of Colonie Senior Resources Department. They provide information and referral. We provide the services, and it works well. In fact, our offices are next door to one another,
Okay.
so we're as close as we can be. And we depend on the Senior Resource Department and their caseworkers to identify those needs and services unmet in the field that allow us to then address the needs of people in the community.
Okay, we're going to get more into some of the programs, specifics as we get along in our show here today. But Russ, now you're I'm not even sure you're on the board, right? You're secretary of the board of directors for the Colonie Senior Network. Colonie Senior Network. So just what is that?
Well, that's a body that was created a few years ago by the Colony Town Board. It's intended to be an umbrella group, kind of a networking opportunity for groups and individuals in the town with interests in senior services and senior programming. So there are people on the board from Senior Resources Department, Colonie Senior Service Centers, the local school districts, EMS, Fire and Police, Visiting Nurses Association. I'm sure I'm leaving out some people, but a variety of individuals really being involved. We don't actually have staff or our own programming. Our intent is really to serve as a location for people to think about and review and figure out what's going on and maybe what's needed. There are a number of committees that the board has that are filled by people on the board as well as others from the community. There's a Programs and Services Committee, Housing Committee, for example, that reviews housing proposals as part of the planning process in the town. I'm chair of the it's a mouthful, the Public Relations, Marketing, and Education Committee.
Right.
So we sort of help get the word out in a variety of ways, and I could tell you maybe a bit later in this, some of the things that we've done as part of that.
So there's several points of entry for people who are looking for information, if they are seniors or for seniors.
Mm-hmm.
Demographics in this particular area. What is the senior population like? Can you give me a clue? I mean, it's, I know I'm a baby boomer. I'm getting older, so I, in some states I am a senior citizen, I guess. But are we dealing with a large amount of people?
Well, Colonie has about 20.6% of the population are people 60 and over. I think it's the second largest senior population in the county. And as you know, people are getting older and staying in the community.
And it's not just, anything to add to that?
I think if we translate that to numbers, they're probably in Colonie probably about 17,000 seniors out of a population of 79,000 and growing. And in the area of growth is occurring where the services are needed most, and that's at the 75 plus and 85 plus age bracket, and that's where senior services are needed. As you and I become part of this fabled status, we won't need the services necessarily as we become younger seniors, but as people age, they need the services, and that's where the greatest growth is coming from, and the need for organizations to plan and network together to meet the need.
People tend to think of suburbs as places for young families, but actually the most common location for older people to live is suburban areas. There's been a graying of the suburbs for decades now, and I think what we're seeing is a growing awareness of the need for suburban areas to not reorient themselves, but to take into account more the aging, especially the aging in place, as it's put, of the population within suburban areas.
And also, there was an article in today's paper about people that are coming back, retiring healthy, maybe in their early 60s, late 50s, going to Florida or warm climates, then turning around 20 years later, relocating to their families, and certainly come back frailer and in need of many services.
Yeah, in that article, was it the article where they mentioned that they had the phrase boomerang children?
Yes.
Can you define that, please? Just people who come back, is that? Or
Right.
go
I
back
think-
and forth?
Right.
No, actually, the boomerang children are the people who've left the nest
Okay.
and then come back to live with their parents. But
right.
these are really boomerang parents,
Right.
which
Right,
is a
exactly,
different
the
kind of
reverse.
situation too.
So the sandwich generation is getting both the children and the parents at the same time. They're both boomeranging back to the nest.
I love the labels.
Lovely for them.
I think the article, though, that the article and some recent articles on seniors come off a little bit, I wouldn't say negative, but they're not jumping for joy that this is happening. And I think those of us that work in the senior community recognize that these are issues, but the approach and the desire to work with seniors, I think, is very positive, and people who work with us are enthusiastic about doing it. Certainly we are. It's our business.
Well, keep them on it.
That's right. That's right. So there's but as you read the articles, it tends to sound like the doom sort of stuff, and these are people with great contributions to society and so forth. So we really ought to embrace them enthusiastically.
Now, I guess it's all right to say your clients or people who use the services. Are you only for people who live in the town of Colonie? Is it just a Colonie exclusive?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We deal with a lot of people where their families live out of town. Maybe the older person lives in town, but many people call us for information from all over the place. So we don't really necessarily restrict to people in the
Okay,
town.
so you don't have to be a resident to avail yourself of the service, and
No.
obviously
Not
not
most
for a
of them.
not-for-profit.
That's correct. If a senior citizen can find us, they certainly are welcome. In fact, some of the programs, like the day service program, if an individual works in the Colonie area, they may be transporting a loved one or a family member to the program as far away as Glens Falls, which is quite a hike if you can think about bringing a parent to a program, because that individual had to work during the day in order to make ends meet.
Now, you said the magic word program. Can you go down some of the programs that you're offering and elaborate? Give us an idea what they are.
Certainly. We all hear the most important program for seniors to maintain their independence is transportation. As people age, they start to give up their license, their cars, and so forth, because it becomes a little bit difficult for them to drive in the evenings and on crowded roads and that sort of thing. So they will do that. Seniors will do that, providing they have reliable transportation. So we provide that as a core service that goes back to the very beginning, and Jan was certainly a part of getting this organization off the ground with other leaders of the community. And that's a service that seniors will use if it's dependable and on time and the drivers are friendly and all of those things. We certainly make every effort to make sure that happens. But we're not the only transportation source in the community. We work with CDTA and
Okay.
STAR and taxi companies and so forth to try and make sure that all the needs are being met. So transportation is certainly a core service for us to make sure that there is an adequate supply of that for seniors.
Now, do you both have transportation now? Because
No.
it's no longer.
No.
It's really okay. Good.
Right.
Then we also provide a meal program, and there are two different types of programs for meals. One is the more commonly known Meals on Wheels program, where meals are delivered to seniors' homes. Our meal program is where we deliver the senior to the meal, and it's called programmatically the Congregate Meal Program. We refer to it as a senior dining program. And a couple of years ago added an added dimension to it called the Dining Room on Wheels program, where we took the dining program to locations where seniors would normally meet, and to encourage them to participate in the program. In fact, Jan was instrumental in setting up the latest one, which is at St. Basil's in Maplewood, an area that is perhaps is a little bit underserved, but they identified the need. We delivered the meal to the site, and it's a flourishing site that meets once a month on a Friday, and people are there to enjoy the meal. So we have 10 of those sites throughout the town of Colonie, in places like Town Hall, the St. Basil's, and some of the churches and community center and so forth, to try and make sure that we meet the need. Then we do a variety of health and recreation programs, and these programs are designed to help seniors age more, provide healthier aging, if you will. And so they're not intended to be programs that you might find in one of the gyms or the health spas or even the Colonie Center. These are programs like osteoporosis prevention and wellness programs that deal with specific aging diseases that help people to manage those diseases. We do the kinds of things like provide space for card playing and bingo and that sort of stuff that a traditional senior center would provide. And then we provide housing through the Beltran Living Center and Sheehy Manor for seniors, and that's about 300 apartments that we provide for seniors. There are other senior housing facilities in the town of Colonie. As a matter of fact, one of the programs we're working with the housing is to determine what the housing stock is for low to moderate income seniors, and middle income seniors, and seniors who are on the higher end of the income scale. And then we also have the Bright Horizons Social Center program, and that program is is really as an expansion of the typical senior center, except that there is supportive help there for seniors who are becoming a little bit more frail and elderly and have dementia and more specifically Alzheimer's. That there's a program where they can continue to socialize with their friends, have 3 meals a day, be prompted to take their meds, although we can't give them medications. And it just creates an environment for them where they feel like they're back in the senior center again and enjoying that. We provide transportation to and from, and we have now opened our 3rd daycare site in Colonie to meet the growing demand for that service.
No, that's a full day. I mean, that's
a full day.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and it's not, because you mentioned transportation is, so there are people who are residents there who partake of this as well as people from the outside,
That's
right?
correct. We cover the 54.7 square miles of Colonie and then some. Sure.
Okay. And the other programs are just a couple hours, or are they integrated in this other, is it they separate from?
The like health and recreation
Yeah.
programs. Health and recreation programs we try to integrate with the meal programs because they seem to work well. If you're going to encourage a senior to come to a meal, try to build a program around it so that it makes their day a little bit more complete as they come to a meal site. So there are different variations of the programs. Typically the health and recreation programs are 45 minutes long. The daycare program is a full day, and transportation is available from 8 to 4:30, 5 days a week.
Okay. Now, being a town department, and you're basically referral service, right?
Yes.
I understand that correctly. So there is no really cost associated with the services you provide.
No,
when
none at
someone,
all.
When someone,
Not at all.
But when we move over to your center, there is a cost associated. It's not just a drop-in center. People say, "Hey, I want this today." There's obviously a cost associated with it, right?
In some cases, there are all aging programs are designed so that seniors can provide a voluntary contribution to support the program.
Okay.
The town of Colonie provides us financial support to run the programs. We do contracted services with the Albany County Office for Aging to provide some of those services. So the cost actually to the seniors is done on a voluntary contribution basis. Whether it's transportation or it's the meal program or health and recreation, they're given an idea in terms of what the cost is to run the program and an opportunity then to provide a contribution to help support the service. But no senior, regardless of their ability to contribute, is denied services.
Okay.
They continue to get the services that they're provided. Even in a daycare program, which is much like a child care center, if you will, in terms of how it's structured and cost and so forth, there are charity care programs from several different sources so that those people who need the program can get the program without having to worry about the cost. If they can't afford to pay, they still get the service.
I think it's also important to emphasize that these are not only programs targeting what you might call the needy seniors, whether you define that in physical terms or you define it economically, because most seniors, in fact, are not needy. But there's a range of programs out there through these programs, through the senior clubs in the town, which is also an important part of the network, designed more broadly to enhance quality of life, educational programming, intergenerational programming, and the like.
Now, you mentioned the clubs. Can you talk more about that, and how many clubs are there, and anybody?
Jan is
There are
really
7 funded senior clubs in the town. 2 meet actually at the Beltrone Living Center. We have one in the village of Colonie, one in the village of Manans, and then the others are in different parts of the town. You basically have to be 55 to join. They do a lot of group socialization, educational programs, and run some excellent day trips, which are very popular.
Do you have to audition? Do you have to be interviewed, or can you just...
No,
Can you apply?
You have to have a talent.
no, as long as
Right.
you're 55 and you're in.
Well, those are the organized clubs.
Uh-huh.
There is a network out there that we're aware of that are usually associated with the faith-based community. They're church-based
Okay.
groups,
All right.
senior organizations. In fact, one of the committees from the Colonie Senior Network, that's their mission, is to bring all of these groups together for awareness. As you started out at the very beginning, points of entry. How do I find out about services available in the town of Colonie, not just from Jan's office or from our services, but by anyone who is affiliated through the network. They'll know how to achieve those services. And that's through this informal network of churches out there in North and South Colonie. And that's really, they do an awful lot of the heavy lifting in terms of providing for their flock or their parishioners and in meeting their needs. And we just simply try to reach out to them and say, if we can help in any way, let us know. By all means, continue to do what you're doing, because this is a big town. But they're less organized, I think, in terms of formal club structures. But there's an awful lot of work that's done out there, and they deserve their kudos for the work that they do every day.
What about the care? Now, you may have already touched this, and forgive me if I didn't connect it, but the caregiver themselves. I mean, is there something out there for a person who has a senior parent, a spouse, who is actually defined as a caregiver or a concerned person?
I
mean,
think
are
there's
there
quite a few
programs?
different programs. We co-sponsor the Tender Loving Care Support Group. It meets in the daytime and in the evening. We also get a lot of calls from caregivers looking for information. We're finding actually in the support group less people are coming out, but more people are calling for information. We also have a grant from the Albany County Office for the Aging to help caregivers, and we're working out one-on-one programs with them to assist them to follow through with the information that we gave them. And then Ed's program has many different caregiver options.
Through the Bright Horizons program, we offer things like lunch and learn programs, so that we'll go to a business who might be dealing with an elder issue which to us, and I always try to be careful how I say this because I don't want it to sound the wrong way. For baby boomers, this is the end of the issue that they started with first, which is, what do I do with my child now if I want to go to work, or I want to have 2 people working in the family? And they're also dealing with the same issue at the present time. So understanding what happened at the beginning of our generation, we try to provide that same kind of service. We know the issues are going on. People are trying to manage their jobs and an elderly parent at home. How do they do that? How do they handle the phone calls and that sort of stuff? So we try to provide that kind of support to companies if they're interested, as well as speaking out and supporting other support groups throughout the community as people need those things. And as Jan points out, time is difficult for somebody who's in a caregiving role because they're working all day and then they got to get home and try to prepare dinner. So coming out to a support group is a little challenging. So figuring out ways to reach them is important, and we try to do that through our website for Bright Horizons, as well as give them the resources that they're looking for, help them deal with what they're trying to deal with. And so there are a lot of resources out there to help with.
Just to clarify, when you were talking about businesses, there are people who are having you help them with employees who have these issues?
That's correct.
Not that they have the issues in the business themselves.
That's
so it's
correct.
employees of theirs. Okay. Now, getting the word out. How does, here you are, and it's a vast network. How do people know about you?
Well, that's always been a struggle, I think, in the whole area of senior services is not only the seniors themselves, but the families. How do they know what's around, what some of the options are, and so forth? And I think that the Senior Network in particular has done a lot of things in the last few years to try to really improve the level of information that's out there. We've put together something called the Resource Guide, which is available to anybody in the town, that lists a variety of different organizations and groups, categorized into different consumer advocacy, employment, health education, legal services, mental health, and so forth. We've just put together what we call a welcome packet, although it's not just for newcomers to the town. But the idea is to have in one place something that has a lot of information very quickly for people who are interested in senior programming and activities. So it has the resource guide, it has a listing of the senior clubs, it has a listing of the programs through senior resources, it has the newsletter that Colonie Senior Service Centers puts out. It has a copy of the web page that we have for the Colonie Senior Network. So we try to put out the word in as many ways as we can.
Okay, but it's a challenge nonetheless. It's word of mouth, referrals, obviously. I mean,
Right.
What does it take for someone to pick up the phone and say,
We find usually a crisis.
okay,
Then people will start looking. It seems like people, this is just what we found, don't seem to educate themselves ahead of time. But when a crisis occurs, they'll find
that's
you.
when it really prompts people. I know that NBC has been doing a series, I think they've gone into their second week right now, that are talking about an aging parent, and so there's a level of awareness that's being
Yes.
raised from that medium, and perhaps that might have some kind
Oh,
of
it would
effect on
certainly
people
help.
cluing into it. And the advice always is to don't wait until a crisis.
Exactly.
Take the initiative to do something now, because it's coming, right?
Mhm.
Or
That's
you're
true.
here.
Yes, we are here. That's
Right.
That's right.
That's true.
Well, we baby boomers are at the vanguard of this, so
That's
maybe
true.
we'll be that much more attuned to all
I
of these
hope so.
issues, I think, once we get into our 60s and 70s. So.
One of the when we started working on the network, one of the great successes, and I think there have been a lot of them, and we're very proud of the work that all of us do at this. But it is increasing the awareness and the invitation for organizations such as EMS and police, who are natural first responders to situations, to know that they have a resource to call Jan's office to say, we've got somebody in crisis here. It doesn't look
Absolutely.
good. Can you have somebody? That's invaluable. And I'm sure that that's been going on for quite a while, because the agencies in the town seem to work pretty closely together. But to listen to the EMS talk to us about what they find, and the police department, and then being able to close that connection is just invaluable.
That's wonderful.
To do that.
Now, do you provide instructional? I was just thinking as you were talking about EMS and when to call and other who to call and all that kind of thing. Do you provide any kind of programming that would give people this information?
Well, we work
I know
with
you have
the
a captive audience.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we actually work with the EMS in terms of, we developed a referral form, and they'll go to somebody's house, see a situation, take care of what they have to do medically, and then refer the person on to us, and then we'll work with the family if there's a family involved. So that we do work very closely with all the town departments.
Great.
We are in the process, though, of developing what we think is a great addition to the network in the town, and that's the Safe at Home and Colony
Yeah.
series. It started out in the Senior Connections newsletter by having articles written by the Peter Barry from EMS and Pete Latanzio from the fire, and
Right.
Steve Hyder from the police department. And now we've been working with the North Colony Central High School, Shaker High School, to develop a program that we hope will run as part of the
That's what we
libraries
like to have
program.
happen. Absolutely.
It reaches the people at home, because a lot of what we do, and Jan's caseworkers really are in the home in more cases, but people reach out to us. They come to us for services in most cases. So there's a recognition that people who are homebound need to have some way to be reached with all this valuable information that's out there. So we're excited about the ability to be able to do that, and working with the enthusiastic kids from Shaker High School has been they're creative and enthusiastic, and they love the project.
I think it's terrific you're working with them. Absolutely.
It recognizes, if I may,
Yeah.
it recognizes also that it's really a very small minority of the senior population who reside in senior housing of any sort. It's mostly people living in homes where they've
Absolutely.
lived for many years, in
You're right.
neighborhoods where they lived for many years. And what they need is the support to continue to do what they want to do as long as they can, which is stay where they are.
It's also a safe way to get the information to them. I mean, as I say, people, are very reluctant. I mean, we experience this here at the library. They don't even want to ask us for a particular
Right.
material.
Yeah.
Are reluctant to pick up a phone, and if something comes to them and makes it seem easier for them
Yes.
to do, it always impresses me in how people don't know something exists. So this is another way, and I think today's program hopefully will
Oh,
help
absolutely.
to.
Sure.
And I would like to be able to to continue maybe apart from what you just talked
Right.
about, some other ongoing series that we can
That would be wonderful.
devoted to seniors and
Perhaps the senior hour.
there you go.
We can
Whatever.
talk about different projects, and, although we'll have to jazz that up to
We'll have to
another-
figure out, ask us, how do we define
That's
this?
right, too.
Now, before we close, we're getting to the end of the program. We've mentioned web pages and contact. So I'm going to start with you, Jan. Could you give us the web page for you and the phone number so people can connect with you?
The web page would be going through the Town of Colony website, and we have a link to that.
So it's www.colonie.org.
Right. Senior resources.
Okay, and there's a menu anyways, you can go there. Senior
Right,
resources.
definitely.
Okay.
Our phone number is 459-5051,
Okay.
and
your operation hours, basically, if someone wants to connect with you.
well, basically, we're 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. We're also at the Beltran Living Center. I don't know
Okay.
if we said that. But certainly any of our staff are available to meet with people later if that's more convenient for caregivers.
Okay, thanks. Ed?
We are at www.colonieseniors.org and www.brighthorizonsocialcenters.org, two different websites.
Okay.
The phone number for the corporation is 459-2857, and my extension is 302.
Okay.
And
want
that
them to
gets
call
you right to
right?
the,
Right to you.
right to
Now,
the top, so the service is returned
Be careful
immediately.
with that one.
But all of our staff, I think, are certainly very responsive to the needs. Any of those extensions, the menu's there. But if you want to get to my extension, it's 302.
Okay, the hours, days of the week to...
We're open Monday through Friday, and from 8 o'clock until 5. There are some programs that go into the evening, but primarily it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Okay. And Russ, there is a website for the network.
There is. It's an offshoot, again, of the town website. So you go to colonie.org/CSN, and that'll bring you into the Colonie Senior Network part of it. And then that also will connect you with senior resources, with Colonie Senior Service Centers, with information about the senior clubs, and so forth. And we've included on the website a listing of other sources of information, public and private, that would also be sources of more information for people.
And I'll have you know, our seniors are getting, more web savvy. I think, if not all, but many of the people who come here take our computer courses are seniors. So we're delighted to be able to offer that so they can have more access to it. As I said, we're at the end of the program. But before we close, is there anything that we may have missed that you would like to share?
I would just like to add one other item. We have been in discussions with WMHT, who is funded by a grant from the Albany Guardian Society, who looks for models of how to deal with the aging population. And one of the projects that they did some time ago was about housing that went nationwide. They were working on the other project, and one of the things that they picked out is, in particular, is how the town of Colonie, through the Colonie Senior Network, is providing services, which they think now it seems to us quite natural to do what we're doing because we've been at this for several years. But for others who look at this, they think that this is a pretty good model for others to be aware of. Not that Colonie has all the answers to all the issues, but the WMHT certainly thinks that this is a good project to work on, and so we're anxious to work with them. They are particularly interested, of course, in how the Shaker High School students are putting together the program.
That's a nice link.
yeah.
Well, kudos to you. I mean, look, why not blow your own horn?
And certainly to the town of Colony. That's right.
Absolutely.
Well, you'll need an agent soon to handle
Yes.
all the TV
Yes,
appearances.
All kudos to Jan and her friends who started the organization 79 and 81.
Absolutely. Well, it's
Thank you.
terrific, link of services, and I'm so glad we had the conversation today. And thank you, Jan,
Yes.
Ed, and Russ for
Thank
coming
you.
once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our pleasure.
And thanks for joining me on Getting to Know You. I hope you enjoyed today's show and will join us next week. Until then, have a good one.